Immigrants in developed countries are finding enormous difficulties and barriers to open bank accounts. Regulations that are resulting in millions of people being financially excluded from the banking system. Common people are paying for the crimes, or a minority, they are paying for the crimes of their state, the same state that they are escaping from, the same state that was oppressing them in their own countries. We need financial reform. In the last 2 decades, the developed world has been developing a series of regulations to combat money laundering and illicit financial activities, such as the financing of terrorist activities. This has been a priority since 9/11, and in the case of Europe, for instance, they have developed their own institution. The G7 has its own institutions called the Financial Action Task Force, and basically these institutions have been working together to tackle money laundering. And that's great. That's of course a priority because we need to safeguard our financial system from this kind of activities. However, the problem that these institutions are producing regulations that are resulting in millions of people being financially excluded from the banking system. I will, for example, talk about 2 cases. The first case is activists. Activists from authoritarian regimes. Specifically, authoritarian regimes are using anti-money laundering regulations to target activists in exile. They are creating smear campaigns. They are creating financial attacks against these activists, which raise the risk profile to the point in which financial institutions in their new countries do not want them as clients. So then what happens is that authoritarian regimes are able to destroy or to damage the rule of law of democratic countries through anti-money laundering regulations. The second case, which me as somebody from Venezuela, who I really care about, is the issue of immigrants. Immigrants in developed countries are finding enormous difficulties and barriers to open bank accounts, simply because of their country of origin. Yes, it is true that, for example, the European Union has provisions that specifically say that all people from all nations should have the right to bank account. However, the reality is that all these regulations have considerations related to anti-money laundering regulations. So what happens is that because these immigrants come from countries with higher probability of anti-money laundering activity, of money laundering activity, then what happens is that these people are financially excluded because of their high risk profile. Let's take, for example, the case of Venezuelan immigrants. Venezuelan immigrants, they come from a country with high illicit activities, corruption, criminality. Their state is heavily sanctioned by institutions like the Treasury Department. So simply because of that reason, millions of people cannot open bank accounts in developed countries. What happens is that common people are paying for the crimes, or a minority. They're paying for the crimes of their state, the same state that they're escaping from, the same state that was oppressing them in their own countries. So what we need is that we need reform. We need financial reform. We need political institutions like the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, as well as national parliaments in Europe, as well as the European Union. We need them to do financial reform, and we need to put human rights at the center of upcoming anti-money laundering regulations. At the same time, we need to tackle financial crime. At the same time, we need to address human rights. Because the reality is that everybody deserves the right to banking. The reality is that without financial access, there is no economic development. According to the World Bank, 75% of people without bank accounts are in poverty. So what is happening is that then these immigrants come to these countries, and because they don't have bank accounts, then they cannot be productive members of society, they cannot be self-reliant on their own work, they are exposed to exploitative contracts, and overall they cannot incorporate themselves to their new countries. So what we need then is to work together to address this issue. It's in the benefit of these millions of people, and it's in the benefit of these host countries. Countries like Spain, countries like Italy, countries like Greece, that have millions of immigrants, especially from countries like Venezuela. We have 7 million people who have left Venezuela in the past years. So what I want is to work together so that everybody has right to basic bank account.